Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have such guest. His name is Tony Santino. Tony Santino is a senior councilman for the Town of Hempstead. Tony is running for as a supervisor of Town of Hempstead and his election is on November 3rd. Let's meet Tony. Tony, thank you so much for coming, sir.
Pleasure to be
Appreciate
here.
it.
Pleasure.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations and all the best for your election
Thank you
on
very
November
much.
3rd.
Thank you.
And I know that you're going to make it. You're
Wow.
going to make the greatest supervisor ever
Thank you.
on the Town of Hempstead.
We're going to try hard.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Tony, this time, I know you've been here in the show before,
Yes.
and I am changing the format of this show a little bit.
Okay.
So I am going to actually ask you this, Tony as, and then you fill in the gap.
Sure.
Is that okay with
No
you?
problem at all. Happy to do it.
Okay, good. So let me start with Tony as growing up.
Well, I grew up, I was born in Corona, Queens, which was right next to Shea Stadium, which the Mets played in at that time, obviously, and it's Citi Field now, but that location there, very nearby there. So I grew up in Corona, Queens. My family moved out to Long Island when I was 9 years old, and to a village called East Rockaway, where I've lived ever since. And I went to public school in East Rockaway, then I high school, grammar school and high school. Then I went on to St. John's University, and I got my degree from St. John's University. And then I worked my way through college. I worked in a supermarket. I worked in a bank. And I had been involved in politics from a young age. From about 15 years old, I started to volunteer in political campaigns, and so that brought me into contact with the local congressman who also lived in East Rockaway.
Right.
And his name was Norman Lent.
Right.
Passed away a couple of years ago. And so, well, I now fast forward to when I was in college. As I said, I worked in a supermarket, I worked in a bank. But then for the last couple of years while I was in college, I got a job in the congressman's local office here,
Right.
which was in Baldwin, Long Island, Baldwin, Nassau County at the time. And then when I graduated college, I stayed on in a full-time capacity. So I had a ready-made career, and the rest is sort of history. So that's me growing up, basically, in a nutshell.
But I know that, when you were even 2 years old, you were interested in politics.
Well, actually, my first recollection is I do remember
Right.
watching with my father the Republican National Convention in 1964. That was the Goldwater Rockefeller Convention, which was
Right.
ultimately won by Goldwater. And I actually do remember that, and I had to have been 3 years old because 1964,
Right.
the summer of 1964, when that convention would have been held, I was 3 years old.
Wow.
So that's my first conscious memory of politics. I'm not saying that I wanted to be a politician when I was 3 years old, but I always
Right.
had a great interest in politics and in current affairs, and I got a lot of that obviously from my father, who is still very interested in what's going on in the world, and we always around the dinner table talked about what was happening in politics and public affairs. That was always a ready conversation every night when we all got together at dinner, and that I think really is what stoked the fire in me to want to get into politics. And as I said, my first real involvement in a political campaign was when I was 15 years old, and a
Right.
friend of mine and I, we would go ride our bicycles up to the campaign headquarters and spend our free time on the weekends volunteering.
So that's what I'm going to ask you, Tony, as campaign worker for Normal Land.
Okay. As I said, I started out 15 years old, basic stuff, stuffing envelopes, that kind of stuff. Kind of graduated to doing other things. It was a time. This was, I guess, the late '70s, and it was a time when there was a lot of old-fashioned campaigning going on. I mean, everything today is TV, the internet.
Right.
But there was a lot. Candidates in those days would do it the old-fashioned way and get a big, get a big van and hook it up to a sound system and have John Philip Sousa marches. I remember that, and we had young ladies dressed up in red, white, and blue sweaters and straw boater hats, and we would go to supermarkets and hand out campaign literature and different giveaways. And one thing we always did was we gave out balloons to any children that were going to the store with their parent. And I actually got very good at blowing up balloons. And and I tried it the other day. I was at a street fair and somebody was blowing up balloons, and I said, let me see if I could still do that. And I still did it, not quite as fast as I used to be. A little like, the fingers don't move quite as well, when you're in your 50s as to when you were in your teens. But I was still pretty good at it. That was my first recollection. And then I started at the bottom, and moved up from there.
Well, that's how it, you understand the whole the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
That's important,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So next is Tony as the youngest village trustee.
Well, while I was in college, I started to become involved in local community organizations in my community of East Rockaway. So I joined the Sons of Italy, I joined the Kiwanis Club, I joined the Knights of Columbus, different groups like that. And I was just a member, and then after a time, the opportunity came to run for the village board, because I lived in a village, so there was a mayor and 4 village trustees. An opening presented itself, and because I had even as a young man, I was fairly well known because I was involved in a lot of different organizations. I had a group that supported me, and I was able to get elected when I was 22 years old to the village board in East Rockaway. And at that time, I remember checking at that time, and now this is 1983, I was the youngest elected official in the state of New York at that time.
Wow.
I'm sure that record's been broken by somebody, but at that time I was the youngest one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next is Tony as a director of communications.
Well, then moving forward, because there's kind of 2 tracks here. There is my own personal political career and what I did for employment. The village trustee job was a part-time job. I mean, it paid very little money. So at the time that I was a village trustee, I was working for the congressman that I referenced before, Congressman Lent. And then later, after about 4 or 5 years there, obviously I wanted to take my career a little further, to move into something that had more opportunity. So I went to work first for Nassau County. I did that for 2 years. And then I got what I consider my real big break, which was to work as the director of communications for the town of Hempstead. So I was the head communications person there, which is meaning all the press releases, all the brochures, all the letters, all the newsletters, any contact that went through from the town to the public went through my office. And it was not in those days. Now we're talking the late 80s, mid to late 80s. It wasn't technology driven. It was still very much newsletters, direct mail, letters to people, that kind of stuff. So, so I had that job for 6.5 years, and that was a great job because that gave me the opportunity to learn every aspect of town government. Because if you're the director of communications, everything goes through you, whether it's something for the Parks Department or the Highway Department or the Sanitation Department. So that really gave me the opportunity to really get into the nuts and bolts of every aspect of town government, and those 6.5 years have stood me in good stead to this day. And then it was from that position that I then got elected to the town board.
Oh, okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Now you had 2 mentors, if I recollect that, Congressman Lent and Chairman Mandelo.
Absolutely, yeah.
These are the 2 people that you
The 2
learned.
people who figure most prominently in my professional life are Congressman Lent, and then obviously Chairman Joe Mondello, who was the presiding supervisor, who was the person who hired me to work as director of communications. He was the presiding supervisor. The job I'm running for now was the job he held at that time.
Oh, okay.
And so those certainly are my 2 mentors and the 2 people who really who really taught me everything I know about government and politics.
So, when you went to work for Congressman Lent, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you were working and he comes in and, you must have some kind of a image of him in
Oh,
your
absolutely.
mind.
I mean, I knew him. I mean, I worked in his office. I drove
Right.
him.
You drove him?
I drove him to different
Okay.
community events. I mean, I did everything. I mean, it was. I mean, when you work in a congressman's office, at least then, I don't know now, but I mean, it's a small staff. You have to do everything. So, I mean, from handling constituent matters in his office, from doing some local public relations, to getting in the car and taking him to a meeting with the VFW or the American Legion. That's what you just did. I took him to the airport when he had to go to Washington on a Sunday night. I would drive him to LaGuardia, or if I had to pick him up on a Thursday when he was coming into town. Because in those days, it was really, as I remembered, it was just Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays that they had to be in Washington. Now it's more. It's become much more of a 5-day-a-week job. But in those days, it was pretty well set. 3 days a week there, and the rest of the time up in the district. So, spent many runs to LaGuardia Airport to drop him off and pick him up.
24/7 job, right? I mean,
Basically,
critical.
yeah. I mean, that's politics. Politics is not government. Politics, public service, whatever you want to call it, is not a job for people who want to just punch a clock and then go home and open up a can of beer and watch the ball game. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if that's the kind of life you want to lead, this is not the business for you, because this is Saturdays, Sundays, nights, weekends. I'm not saying you work all the time, but it doesn't stick to any clock. You have to do what you have to do when you have to do it. So it's that kind of thing.
So now you, Tony, I want to ask you, Tony, as a councilman, because you were the longest councilman in the town of Hempstead.
Right now, currently, as of the day we're taping this, I'm the senior councilman in the town of Hempstead. I've served there for 22 years. Wow. Worked in that capacity with 3 different town supervisors, and councilman is a great job. It was when I first went on the town board, we ran at large, meaning town-wide, and then so that means I would run around like I'm doing now, from Levittown to Inwood to New Hyde Park to Seaford. Then in the year 2000, the system changed and it went into districts. Okay. So then I had a much smaller area to cover, which basically was part of the 5 towns: Limbrook, Rockville Center, Oceanside, Baldwin for a time, Island Park, East Rockaway, of course, where I live, and South Hempstead. Much smaller area, and that was very good because that you really got to know your community. You get to know the people in it. You can concentrate much more with much more focus on the problems of your constituents when you're covering a much smaller area. So that's the way it's been for the last 15 years. And but of course now, running for supervisor, I'd be going back to should I be elected, I'd be going back to covering the entire town again.
Again, right? Yeah. That's so. I know that you have got some projects that you have done and which you are really proud of, for when you are in a councilman, as a councilman.
Yeah.
And
we
rebuilding Coliseum is one of them.
Yeah. Well, the things that are going on now that are most exciting, obviously, I think the biggest thing is the redevelopment of the Coliseum and the property around it. It's really the property around it, and I think I think County Executive Ed Mangano is doing a great job with that, because you got to understand that's county-owned property. So the county really is the driving entity behind that. The town has the zoning power, and what Supervisor Kate Murray and the town board did was we enacted a zone quite some time ago so that potential developers knew exactly what they could build there, and it worked very, very well. And then the county executive, Mr. Mangano, went out and negotiated with this Forest City Ratna, who's now rebuilding the Coliseum and developing the acreage around it. But there's so much more there. There's going to be the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is going to be there. Now there's this new effort with these different biotech companies. So I think it's an exciting opportunity to create some good paying jobs, to make the town of Hempstead, Nassau County, a mecca for technology industries. Also, with a great deal of the property is going to be entertainment oriented. So we're going to have it's going to be like a destination spot. People can either go to a concert, go to a movie, go to great restaurants, all right there right in the center part of the town of Hempstead.
Welcome back to Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. We are having a conversation with Tony Santino. Tony is running for the supervisor of the town of Hempstead, largest township in the country. Welcome back, sir.
It's great to be here, Raj.
So now we're going to talk about your race, supervisor.
Right.
You're running as a supervisor. You've been doing this for 22 years as a councilman. You know in and out of everything that goes on in the town. So how did you decide to run for this?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. It's at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, when you're in a position, you tend to aspire to the next highest position. So it's something I have aspired to ever since I went on the town board, or very shortly thereafter, because obviously you watch other people do the job over the course of the years, and you learn from them, and you want to have that opportunity to put your own mark on the town. So it's something I've aspired to for quite some time. And then earlier this year, when Supervisor Kate Murray, who's done a fantastic job over the last 12 years as town supervisor, when she decided to run for district attorney, then obviously it created an opening to run this year, and I asked to be considered by Republican Party leadership, and I was selected, and I'm very proud that I also have the conservative. In addition to the Republican line, I have the conservative, I have the Independence Party, the Reform Party, and the Tax Revolt Party. So I think I have a pretty good broad base of support. I've been endorsed by the Long Island Federation of Labor. I've been endorsed by CSEA. I've been endorsed by the PBA, the Detectives Association, the Superior Officers Association, a lot of the smaller police department PBAs, the Court Officers Benevolent Association, the New York City Uniform Fire Officers Association. So I've got a pretty good support system behind the campaign.
So what, do you want to win 90 to 10?
No, I just want to win. The one thing I've always learned is that you always run as if you're 10 points behind. So I'm running as hard as I know how to run, and whatever happens on election day, I'll feel confident that I did everything I could. I obviously want to win, but it doesn't matter if it's by 2 points or by 20 points. I think I could do a good job as supervisor, and I think I can help the town move forward and get even better than it is. I think we have a great town, and I think there's still a lot of good things we can do.
Okay, so that comes to, what is your vision for the town?
Well, I mean, something's different, but I mean, obviously the most important thing to me, I think, is to keep the town of Hempstead fiscally and financially sound. We're very proud that at the town level, we've kept taxes in check. Town taxes is the one thing people don't realize. Town taxes are roughly 9% of the total tax bill. Okay. School taxes are 65%. I mean, that's where the money goes. Right. So when people say, "Oh, I pay $8,000 in property taxes," well, they do, but they probably on average only pay $700 to the town of Hempstead, right, for all that you get for that. Right. The vast majority of it obviously goes to the local school district. Yeah. But so I want to keep the town financially sound. We've got an excellent Wall Street credit rating. Despite the recession, which is still, as far as I'm concerned, still there, because you don't see that economic activity that's creating the sales tax revenue or the mortgage tax revenue that we normally get. So we're still in a place where in a time where we have to be very, very careful of budgets and keep an eye on expenses very, very carefully. We're still in a period of belt tightening, so I want to keep the town financially and fiscally sound by continuing to closely monitor expenditures, try to do things better but cheaper if possible, use technology to save money and to continue to deliver good services. So I mean, I want to focus on that because I think that's the most important thing that we can do and must do is to keep taxes in check. So that's my number one priority. But then there are other things. I think one of the other big issues I'd like to address, we have a real problem across Long Island. It's not just a problem that has anything to do with the town of Hempstead alone, is that we need to find a way to create opportunities for young people who graduate from college, graduate school, whatever the case may be, who have the skills that the new high-tech economy and industries require. We have to find a way to keep them on Long Island, because right now many of those young people, they get out of college, they're saddled with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt or more, school debt or more, and it's impossible to come up with a 20% down payment on a home, so we have to create that opportunity where young people, where their choices, if they want to remain here, right now their choices are to live in an illegal basement apartment or to move back into the room that they grew up in. We have to find a better way. We have to find a way to expand housing opportunities for young people so that they can come back to the communities that they grew up in, so that their choices aren't, whether they're going to live relocate down south or out west. We need to keep them here in New York on Long Island, and that's going to be one of my focuses.
But as you said, that Supervisor Murray has done a great job for the last 12 years, and what would you do different than her, or you will continue the same path?
No, I think I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue down the path that she said. I'm not saying that I'm not going to be innovative and put my own stamp on things, but I mean, it's hard to take issue with Kate. She has such a great record of running the town over the last 12 years.
Exactly.
But I'm sure that as I get my feet wet and roll up my sleeves, there will be my own mark will be put on a lot of things.
Okay. 3rd is the day.
That's correct. That's election day.
Okay. So what is your message for November 3rd? What should we do? Vote?
Go out and vote.
Course.
Go out and vote Republican. Okay. I've got a great team running with me at the Town of Hempstead. I have Nasreen Ahmed, who's a great town clerk.
Right.
A real great story, right from really a great all-American story of a young woman who came to this country and made a tremendous career here and did a great job, and who was entrusted with a very important position of town clerk and has done a marvelous job with it. We have a great receiver of taxes, Don Clavin. Tough job, but he does it very well. He's the one guy I know that makes you happy to pay your taxes. He runs a great office, and I've got great council members: Bruce Blakeman, Ed Ambrosino, Erin King Sweeney, who is Congressman Pete King's daughter, and she's certainly proof that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She's a real dynamic, hard-charging public official, just like her father. So if you vote Republican down the line, Kate Murray all the way down the line, get all the judges in between. That's my message for November the 3rd.
Great. Now you are involved with the South Asian community a lot.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Give us some of your views and comments on our community.
Well, I think the South Asian community is I think it's what America is all about. It's people coming to this country for a better life, to seek out a better life for themselves and for their families and their children and their grandchildren. And it's a highly educated community, a hard-working community, a community that is very much believes in entrepreneurship, right. And that creates jobs, and that is there are so many success stories, so many people that I've met in the South Asian community, whether they're doctors or engineers or businessmen, and it's and almost invariably there are people who came here with almost nothing
Right.
and really built something.
Right,
And I
right.
think that's the story of America.
Great. I really appreciate your time, Tony.
Raj, my
today.
pleasure,
Thank you.
always.
Thank you so much. You know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Great
for
to be here.
joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. You can watch our prior shows on YouTube at youtube.com/Infosys International. That is youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
All the best. That's
Thank
great.
you.